Hey there, and welcome to Go Far Girl, the podcast where women share the stories that changed them, one journey at a time. I'm your host, Chantel. I'm a travel writer and a lifelong wanderer, and I believe that every mile we travel brings us closer to the strongest, boldest, most authentic versions of ourselves. Each week, I'll sit down with incredible women to talk about the trips that shaped them, the lessons they learned along the way, and the power of going far in every sense of the word. So grab your coffee, your journal, or your carry-on, and let's dive in. All right. All right. Welcome back. So, in our last episode, we talked with Natalie, and she is back with us here today. For those of you who missed last episode, go back and listen to it. But just a recap, Natalie was a professor, an English professor. She got tired of the living quarter to quarter life, took her kids out of school, moved to the country, and has been driving around teaching her kids on the road ever since. They've been to 21 national parks, I believe. And her kids get the homeschooling, hands-on learning that way as they travel as a family. Over 20,000 miles in the last 2 years they've done. So that's pretty incredible. So in the last episode, we talked a lot about the route that led her to the decision of being on the road, of giving up her steady job, things like that. And today I kind of want to talk more about the actual journeys, the destinations themselves. So last year they went on a big trip to the Utah Mighty Five. For those of you that don't know, those are the 5 national parks in Utah, which are some of the finest in the country. You've got Moab, which has Arches and Canyonlands National Park. And then you've got Zion, Bryce Canyon, and the one I always forget, Capitol Reef. Capitol Reef. So Natalie's going to talk to us more about those, give us her favorite things to do in the parks, why she loves them, why you should go. And I'm going to turn it over to her. Welcome back. I'm so glad you came back to hang out with us again.
Yes, I'm glad to be back to talk about all things Utah National Parks.
It's really like a different world out there. It's just so beautiful that even if you've seen pictures, I feel like when I went, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I don't know how many times we said it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's like Mars. Oh my gosh. It's just so different. So tell me, first off, which is your favorite of the 5? I know.
Child, isn't it? Right?
No, that's easy.
God.
I'm
Say, I know it's a cliche answer, but I loved Zion. It's just so pretty. It's a favorite for a reason. But I feel like Capitol Reef was my sleeper hit of the 5.
Ooh, I love that.
Right at Capitol Reef, and you can drag me into anything with a good. So
Wait, like in the park, I get the little ranger station, like at the stores, they just have pies.
there's this place called the Gifford House, which is part of the Fruita district. And that's where the Mormon pioneers actually settled and then made some incredible things out of this, what seems like would be in a landscape that you could not grow anything. There are still fruit orchards there that you can pick from for free as much as you can eat in the orchards. And then you can buy it and take it home with you, but it's super, super cheap. So they actually take the fruit from the orchards and make these little pies, which they're probably not single serving. Any pie is a single serving. If you're
Even hiking, what are you going to do?
but yeah, they have these amazing little pies that are for probably 2 or 3 people, or 1 if you're me. And they have a bunch of different flavors, and you wait in line at the Gifford House and you get your little pies and you sit out in front of it. And it was just so unexpected. Where else can you get a pie in a national park? I don't think anywhere.
Cool.
So,
I don't know.
yeah.
I'm about to go find out because that sounds like a delight. And I haven't been to Capitol Reef, so that's cool. Yes.
Yes.
So tell us what you did. You did a road trip. You saw them all on one trip, right?
On one trip. Yeah. So we had been to Moab before. When the kids were really little, we went out, and we have family that lives out in Colorado. So we had tacked on some extra stuff before going to go see them. And so we had done Arches, and that was the first time, like you were saying, this place looks like Mars. I want to know more. I want to see more. But because we both had jobs and we were going to go see family, we had such a limited amount of time. that we couldn't see everything I wanted to see. We didn't get to go to Dead Horse Point State Park. We didn't get to go to
Oh, I
Canyonlands. It
saw
was
that.
literally
Yeah.
just in Arches. And then we were on to Denver was where we were actually heading. And so I said, I am coming back. I want to do all of them. I want to see more of the state. It looks so different than South Carolina. And it rented headspace for 8 years before I
Oh,
could
that's
come
how they
back.
get you.
I said, and so the road trip we took last summer actually started out as I want to go back to Moab again. I want to do Canyonlands. I want to do Arches. And then it was, if I'm out there, we could probably go to Colorado on the way there. And if I'm already in Utah after we go to Moab, I could probably do the rest of the big five. And then it ballooned into this. We want to go to Craters of the Moon in Idaho. That's close to Glacier National Park, which is close to Badlands. So we ended up on this just magnificent, incredible 2 month road trip through the West. So yeah,
Amazing.
they got me. That Moab just reeled me in and it
Yeah.
exploded from there.
So let's take park by park and how you suggest someone does is it a circle? If someone's not doing, if someone doesn't have the time to do a huge big one, but they still want to see all five. So let's go where you would start about how many days you think each park needs. I know you could do a billion days in each park, but really just to get those really super aha moments and important things, what would you, if you were to design a trip for me, what would you do?
So since we were on a much longer trip, I know that we had flexibility that a lot of people don't necessarily have.
Mhm.
It was also part of a much longer trip. We were coming in and we did it in a way that I wouldn't recommend the normal person do it because we were coming in from Colorado. And so I guess if you wanted to drive in from Denver, but that's a long way. Again, if you have limited vacation days, I would actually fly into Las Vegas, which is way closer to that little southwestern section of Utah, fly into Las Vegas, skirt the little corner there, go up, do Zion or as they say, Zion, which I was corrected several times with my southern accent. It's not Zion, Zion. We do Zion and then Bryce Canyon, which are fairly close together, and then go up through Capitol Reef and then around and do Moab and then Arches and Canyonlands. And then you have kind of a long drive on the way back, but you could even hook through like Monument Valley on the way back, do Grand Canyon, and you'd make a big loop
But that'd be fun.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be a lot to do. I think I've even had people reach out to me on my blog because I've written a big post about our experience and seeing all five of them with the kids and everything. And I've had people ask me, how fast can I do these? Because I recommend on the blog about 10, 11 days, which I know is probably at the max for most people's vacation time. And even that is going to feel like a
You're
trot
on the
because
move.
we
Yeah.
spent almost 5 weeks there. And I feel like we still had to make really difficult decisions about what we were seeing and how long we were spending it at each place. So unlimited days would be my recommended amount of time to go there. And I know that's not feasible, but I would say that if you could give each park at least 2 days, then you can go in, do at least a good hike or two. Then you can still go like in Zion. It's almost impossible to go there and not want to go hang out in Springdale a little bit because they've got so many cute little shops and restaurants and things like that. Highly recommend e-biking in Zion. That was something that
Ooh,
we did while we were there. You get to skip all the shuttle crowds. You don't have to worry about parking. So we just rented e-bikes, went in, and just got to play around in the park the whole
that's
time. It was
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
They even had ones we found that had my dad was with me for that part of the trip. And so he rented one and I rented one. He carried my 10-year, she was then 10, and I carried my then 7-year-old. And they had these little like benches on the back. We strapped coolers and backpacks back there. So
You're like a
it
petty
was
snab. You're just like, yeah.
it's like $5. I'll take you. Take you down.
But that's unique. You don't see that in a lot of parks where you could just rent that and do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and they have tons of bike paths, the main scenic corridor that goes down to Temple of Sinawava and the Narrows and everything. All of that is closed to traffic anytime the shuttles are running, which is most of the time because Zion's so popular. You do have to, if you see a shuttle coming behind you, you do have to pull over just for their safety and yours. But for the most part, you just go and you've got your, we would see other people on e-bikes and stuff like that, but it was so few people were out there doing it. It was like you had the park to yourself when you were on the road just enjoying the canyons. We saw the endangered California condors while we were out there. It was just,
No
it was so
way.
cool. I,
That's
I,
such a cool way to
I,
see a park. Yeah,
no,
and
I
Zion's a big park, so
want
I
to
imagine, yeah,
do
that
this.
the less traffic, any
Yeah,
way you can avoid that traffic and those backups is gonna give you a benefit because then you can see more.
right.
That's
And
so
it's a
cool.
balance between me being real and wanting to do total budget travel because at my heart, I am a budget traveler, but also time is money. And I don't have time to sit there and tell the kids it's only going to be another hour till the shuttle picks us up as they're all tired and hot and upset and everything. So we
Did you
made
have
the
to book
choice to
the
spend a little.
Did you have to book the bikes in
Yeah.
advance? Do you have to rent them ahead of
So
time, or can you show up?
we we flew by the seat of our pants. I knew this was a thing you could do. And
Mhm.
so I went and I told to, I believe it was Greater Zion e-bikes, which not an affiliate, just rented it like any other person. They helped me out. They had a bunch of different bikes, ones with baby seats and the ones with the benches that we ended up getting. And they they were very helpful. So yeah, I mean, at high like peak season, I don't know that I would chance it,
This,
but we
that,
were going
yeah.
in the colder season. So there were some people there, but it's not like I've seen lines and lines where people are just waiting for hours for the shuttles and stuff. So it wasn't like that while we were there. But yeah, e-biking through Zion, I feel is the cheat code for that
I
park and avoiding.
I love that. Okay, so let's move to oh wait, in Zion. So where do you stay? If you have a camper or if you don't, what's like the town that you're basing yourself out of for Zion?
Yes. So Zion actually had the national park has two campgrounds within it. Watchman is the only one that you can actually stay in right now because the South Campground has been just razed to the ground. They're rebuilding it. There's nothing there. It's just a dirt lot right now. So it'll be a while before that one gets rebuilt. We looked at staying in Watchman inside the national park, but I ended up choosing not to just because I am traveling with little kids. They like to have a pool, they like to have the amenities,
Mhm.
playgrounds, which the national park campgrounds don't. They just are serving a different group than me
Sure.
and my kids. So we ended up staying at Zion Canyon Campground and RV Park, which is so close to Watchman that it's on here's Watchman Campground in the park. Here's Zion Canyon Campground. It's on either side of the Virgin River. Like you can walk across the river
Nice.
and actually go into the park that way. So we biked or we walked into the Zion National Park via the pedestrian entrance, which was less than a quarter mile from our campground. So I loved it. Best showers that we found on the entire trip were at this
Woohoo.
campground.
Love
So it
that.
was like spa because we have a back camper, but it is so small as to make you challenge, do I actually need to wash my hair tonight? Is it really that serious? We try to avoid using it unless the kids are just absolutely filthy. And even then, we have an outdoor shower that will hose them down in rather than using the indoor shower because it's so small. It's so small.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah, we
funny.
love that campground. It has amazing views of all of like the big cliffs that are outside Zion, great pool. It felt like summer camp. They had lots of activities, a s'mores pit. We had a great time while we were
Oh,
there.
fun. So
Yeah.
the next is Bryce. And is that close enough where you could stay in one location and then just drive to Bryce and come back? Or would you move on?
So I would probably just for my own personal travel ethos would probably move on,
Okay.
but they are close enough that if you got up really early, you could have a full day in Bryce Canyon and then drive back. Because I believe they're only about 90 miles apart. You'll have to check
Okay.
mine on that. We ended up, there is a way to go from Zion up to Bryce, but you have to go through the Zion Mount Carmel tunnel, which was made in, I want to say, the late 1920s. And we just have a Ford F-150. So it's a larger truck, but it's not like the largest truck that you can get. And just driving through there without the camper, I felt like I was hitting every wall, the ceiling, every other car that was going through there. So you can take your camper, but if your camper is over a certain length and height, which mine is on the cusp, I have a little camper, but it's still fairly tall. You have to get the rain. You have to call ahead. You have to tell the rangers to stop the traffic in both directions.
Oh
And they
my
have to like
gosh.
drive down the middle because you can't go on the side because it's like this. It's sloped on the side. So the camper would rub up again. And I just didn't want to deal with all that. So we went
Yeah.
around the long way to get to Bryce Canyon rather than go through the shorter way, which is the more scenic way, just because I had too much other things going on. I couldn't call a ranger to arrange transport.
No, that
But yeah,
sounds
they all,
terrible.
but there were people that did it. That when we were driving back and forth through the tunnel, doing different hikes in different parts of the park, we actually saw campers pulled over waiting for the moment that the rangers were going to stop traffic for the campers on either end of the tunnel.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a mile, like 1.1 miles, and it is very small. Like, you can tell that back in the day in the 1920s, that they were not expecting a Ford F-150 to ever ride over there. Model lady going through
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What was your favorite thing about Bryce?
So Bryce, the hoodoos truly
Mhm.
look like something off of Mars. I have to say, in all of the traveling that I've done, both here and abroad, I have never seen anything like the amphitheaters with all the hoodoos and that just cascade down. As I mentioned, I think in the last episode, my kids are really into history, particularly they are really interested in Native American history. And so they were delighted to find out that there's a section that actually the Native people there call the Silent City because they believe that the trickster actually froze the original people who lived there, and that's what the hoodoos actually are. So to this day, whenever we look at the pictures, my kids are like, "Oh, look at the Silent City. The people are just waiting to come back to life." I don't know. We just love integrating that kind of
Yeah.
mythos and there's
Yeah.
creativity into all of that. Um, it really the hoodoo situation captured my kids' imagination. We walked the rim trail. We actually rented bikes there and we rode the rim trail, and there's a multi-use trail. And they wanted to stop at every overlook. I didn't think they were going to be that into it because there are some differences in the overlooks, but like not that much. And I would think a 7-year-old would say, "Hey, we just stopped 5 minutes ago. Let's stop again and look at this other slightly different perspective." But Bryce Canyon was startling in terms of just the geology that's there and all the forces that had to come together in order to make the hoodoos what they are today. So yeah, that was not what I was expecting because, like I said, I this was the first time I'd ever been to Bryce Canyon, and it's not a canyon; it's amphitheaters, and you're up at the top, kind of looking down, and all the hikes go down into the amphitheater, which you also have to be careful about. We try to bite off more than we can chew all the time. Especially Charleston, essentially, which is just as flat as can be. In some places we are below sea level, and then going to a place like that, which I believe it goes up to about 8,800 feet above sea level, is just we have to really be careful about some of the hikes we go on because the lack of oxygen to our poor low country bodies is just
That's how I felt at Rocky Mountain. I was like, I might die
yes,
here, but it's going to be really pretty.
exactly. At least I'm out doing what I love.
Oh, it's crazy how much it affects you though, because you don't think about it. And it's so significant. It's hard. Yeah.
It's creeping up over the time period that we did because Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef are much higher. Bryce Canyon being even higher than Capitol Reef is compared to some of the other parts of Utah. We got up there, was like, oh gosh, whew, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be wearing out as much as it does. We hiked all day and we're still just totally out of breath there because of the elevation, but it was worth it. It was so pretty. We loved our time at Bryce Canyon. And there's so much to do around there too. Kodachrome Basin State Park. I don't know if you've ever been there. It is one of those places that, is off the beaten track. It's in Cannonville, which is maybe 20-ish minutes from the park. But like it is just so pretty. They had archery for the kids to do, and we got to shoot at like this pretend jackalope, and they had little baby archery sets for the kids, and they had a little dinosaur dig where they got to dig for different like stone, like little semi-precious gems and stuff. And they got to
Well,
keep it was
cool.
for free. They had a
That's
nature
fun.
trail. It was really fun. So that was one of the things we did there. We went and we did an ATV rental through the Dixie National Forest, which butts up against Bryce Canyon. That was so much fun. There was nobody out there. We got to see these prairie dogs and we got to see bristlecone pines that were 1,000 years old. And there's also Panguitch, I think I'm saying that, which is this little old west town. And we went and we had burgers there and we went to an antique store that's in, I think, the old fire station. There's so much to do. There's nothing around the area, but right there, right around Bryce Canyon and Bryce Canyon City, we spent almost a week there, and I still feel like there was stuff that I was saying, I really wish we had another day or two here. I really wish
Oh,
we had time to do this. So if I'd had to expand our time anywhere, I think it would have been, well, in all of them, but probably I
mhm.
would have added at least another day in the Bryce Canyon area and then another day actually at Capitol Reef. So those were two that kind of surprised me with the amount of stuff that was there to do, despite both of them being really remote individually.
I think you
I
bring up a good point that I've learned, and I don't think a lot of people think about it. And this is really important, like at parks at Glacier, places that get really busy like that. The national forests that are literally the exact same spot as a national park,
Yes,
you can do hikes without as many people. You can bring your dog on a hike where you can't sometimes
right,
in the park. All these things, and the river is still the same river that runs through the parks. It's just over here. And there
right.
are so many other opportunities, and the state parks, especially Utah, has so many great state parks as around those. You really get less crowds, less structure sometimes, less built up tourism places, and you really get to see a lot of cool things. And so I think that's such a good point that other people should think about when you are, especially at these busy parks. Maybe you can't get a permit to go up a certain road or you can't get into a certain hike, but you can go up the road a mile and a half and have an epic experience that's going to be just
Absolutely.
as pretty. And so I'm glad that you
Right.
brought that up because I think that's so
Yes.
important.
Yeah. You don't get the little like national park stamp, but if, and I say this as a collector of the national park stamp, sometimes that's not what really matters. Just going
I
out and
know.
experience your area and
Yeah.
seeing it to fullest is worth not getting the stamp or getting the stamp and doing
And then
all of these other
going.
things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk about Capitol Reef. Right. So I
Yes.
don't think
So
a lot of people
Capitol,
know a lot about that one.
yeah. So it is, I believe it and Canyonlands are at the bottom for the number of people who visit. And I forget which one. I want to say it's Canyonlands that's
I think it is
the
Canyonlands. Yeah.
then must be Capitol Reef is like number 4. But there were so few people that were there while we were there that we only found one area where there were any parking woes, which I know there's a lot of parking woes in Zion and Orchards and all of the other ones. But Capitol Reef, the only time that we had any issues where we had to make the loop around the parking lot was at Hickman Natural Bridge, which it was a fantastic hike. It also shares a trailhead with 2 much longer hikes that are in the area. So the turnover is not as quick as you would think it would be if you're just going for Hickman Natural Bridge, which is less than a mile. So you look and you're like, why are these people, what are they doing on this trail? It's because they're on the 9-mile version that goes
Yeah. It's
way.
all
They're
day.
not exactly. You have to be patient. And we actually went past that one, ended up doing a different hike and then came back a different day and were able to find a spot for Hickman Natural Bridge. So, as with any of the parks, be flexible. If it doesn't, you don't hit it the first time. If you have time in your schedule, loop back. Like you can sometimes get really lucky and you pull right in, and there's a spot right there at the trailhead, and you can pop out and be on the trail in 2 minutes. So, maybe you're lucky. I'm not always lucky, but we try anyway.
Especially with parking.
Exactly. Exactly. So there's the Capitol Reef is funny because it's divided in half by a state road. So when we came in, we were, like I said, we were doing the parks in the reverse order of what I would actually recommend people doing. We were coming down from Moab off of 70 and came through Hanksville. And that whole stretch is amazing. It is so remote and it truly does feel like you're driving. If there was a road on Mars, it would look like this. Just out in the middle of nowhere, sign saying, please fill up. There's nothing for another 70 miles or 100 miles. And they're going, please camper tires. Please do what you're supposed to do. Please truck. Don't do anything weird. But if you could get over that anxiety, the scenery is absolutely epic. So we came down, like I said, from Moab through that whole area through Hanksville and ended up, we didn't realize we were in the park until I passed the visitor center because there's no entrance station because it is
Oh.
a 2-lane public road. And technically, if you're driving through and you're stopping, you're supposed to have your America the Beautiful pass or pre-board pass to have that if a ranger ever asks. there is no cell service in most of the park. So they tell people to take a screenshot and put it in their phone photos because you pulling it up and showing your rate is never going to happen. They're going to charge you. I don't know what happens if they find you and you haven't paid the pass. I don't know. I'm a rules follower. I had my America Beautiful pass like hanging on my dashboard. Do you not see? Here I'm up above board. I've done all this. So you come through and there's that. So you can just drive through and you can see these beautiful cliffs but they're more, whereas like Zion is more of the oranges and the reds. Capitol Reef is more blonde, the rocks there. So it feels cooler. Whereas like Zion just feels so, I don't know, zazzy with the red and the orange and everything. But it's also because there are several rivers that flow through what otherwise looks like a desert environment. There's a lot of greenery at the bottom of these cliffs. And a lot of that is thanks to the Mormon pioneers who came and settled there in the late 1800s and really just eked out this existence difficultly, it seems. And they had people there going to the one-room schoolhouse until the end of World War II, I believe, 1945.
No
So
kidding.
yeah, it is so cool because you can actually, like I said, go to the Fruita district, which is where the pies are, and you can see there's the Gifford House, which used to be one of the houses. There's an old barn, which is the really iconic one. If you've ever seen a photo of Capitol Reef, it's the barn, and there's a little road running past it with the cliffs in the background. So you can go see that. And then there's a place I guess like an equipment shed where you can see all the old farm equipment and then all of the fruit orchards that you can go into. And so there's also a one-room schoolhouse that you can't go in, but you can peek in the windows and they have little placards and stuff outside that you can go visit. And so you really get this idea of really how hardy these people had to be, first of all, to even think about, oh, I'm going to cultivate this land that is nothing but rocks and cliffs and dirt. And they turned it into, you can still go eat the fruit there today, which is really cool. So I liked that juxtaposition that in parts of the park, it feels very desert like, but then you go down into Fruita and there are fruit orchards and there's greenery and there's little deer eating the grass while you're having a picnic. So it's really unique. It doesn't feel like the other parks at all, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. So nobody goes to see it, which is really sad.
That's crazy. So then you go down to Moab,
Yeah.
and then in Moab, you can visit Canyonlands, Arches, and Dead Horse State Park, correct? It's all based right out of there. I was surprised when I went to Arches. It's not a very big park. Arches, it's not really very big. And what I do
Yeah.
love about Arches is you could hike everywhere, and it's so amazing to get up close to these amazing arches and things like that. But if you can't hike, the road is great too. You can really see a lot of the cool arches and viewpoints and down into the fiery furnace and all of that from your car. So if people
Right.
can't get out and do those hikes, they can still get that opportunity to check those things out. But if you can hike, you should hike because
Yes.
it's
Always.
so like you have no idea how big they are until you're just standing there and it's just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
What
to
did you
think that exists, like,
Yeah.
naturally, no one
And
built it
still and
that way.
why and what is happening and why is it still
Right.
there? It's so crazy. You
Yeah.
always see, oh, this one fell or whatever, but some of those are just even delicate arch. It gets so narrow in certain parts that I can't imagine
Right.
why it's just chilling. It's just hanging
It's
out.
still just hanging out there and probably
Yeah.
will be for millions of years, and it's just happened so slowly, but, yeah, they do have that sense of just being so delicate in terms of delicate arch, but some of them just like, we went and hiked out to Broken Arch, and even though it's called Broken, like, you can tell at one point somewhere along the way that part of the arch sort of fell onto the other one, but it's still holding
Mhm.
its weight.
Yeah.
My kid I have a picture of them standing underneath it, and that was not the reality of the situation because they're smiling in the photo, but directly before and directly after, they were both just in sheer terror that thing was gonna fall and I'm like, "Y'all, it's like for tens of thousands of years. Today is probably not Hey, that is
What are the
yes,
odds?
exactly. But yeah, they loved Broken Arch despite the terror. They liked standing back and looking at it. And then Sand Dune Arch was
I was just
also
gonna ask if you did that one.
huge.
My
We
boys
went there.
loved sand dune. Yeah.
It's just a giant sand pit. And it's cool in the middle of the day, even though it's really hot outside. And so we went there on this last trip. We went 3 different times and they loved it so much that Sand Dune Arch became the carrot of, hey, if you're really good, we'll go back to Sand Dune Arch tonight before dinner kind of thing. 'Cause
Nice.
they just kept asking, can we please go back? Can we please go back? And we would just go and I would just
Yeah.
sit in the sand, which was cool, and just
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
covered in sand every time, but man, they had a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was my
new.
boy's favorite too. I love that.
Yeah, and we even had a pool at the campground that we stayed at and a playground, and
Yeah.
they just wanted a
Yeah.
giant natural sandbox and sand dunes.
That's amazing. Did you like Canyonlands? How did you feel about that?
Canyonlands, it was I enjoyed it is the short answer. The long answer is that it is so big as to be overwhelming.
And hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and to figure out in this gigantically vast landscape, one, what am I willing to do with my kid out here in the middle of nowhere? And two, how can I accurately, in any way, kind of experience this? Because you have the
Mhm.
3 different districts. One of the maze I have never been to because it is so, we actually passed the entrance to it on the way from Moab around as we were headed to Hanksville. Like it was that far to get to the other
Wow.
side of Inlands. But then the Needles and the Island in the Sky, even those are what, an hour and 15 minutes apart. And it's
Mhm.
still, they're still right there as the crow flies. They're not that far apart, but because there's no bridges over any of the rivers in the park, have to go way
Yeah.
around to get to each one of them. So I that was one of the places that I thought if I come back and it's nice and cool and we're all like in hiking, like we could just knock ourselves out in terms of seeing this place. It is amazing that we have canyonlands and that much area has been protected and put aside just for recreation. But at the same time, it can be intimidating for a first time visitor to be like, where do I start with this whole
Yeah.
thing? So,
I love
you know,
Canyonlands though, watching the layers of the rocks and all the
yes,
different the colors, how they change. And a ranger was telling us this is prehistoric, this is and all the layers of the different ages. And so it was neat to be able to date those and watch it change as the
yes,
colors changed on the canyons. And so that was pretty fun to learn about
yeah,
all the different.
yeah. Yeah, I think if I could ever crack Canyonlands, really go just spend 3 or 4 weeks going to as much of it as I possibly could, I think that could easily be my favorite part because there just
Yeah.
feels like there's so much there that you just can't really do in 5 to 7 days of doing that
Right.
and other
It's
mo
not a drive through like Arches. You
Yeah,
have to get down and dirty and get into it to, yeah.
like that because it wasn't very busy when we went. And, because it's not a drive through, like you said, you really are forced to get out and say, okay, how am I going to experience this? How am I going to place myself into this and make my experience matter past, oh, look, there was the Green River overlook. I think we passed the sign. Actually
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
do stuff with it. It's very much an active park as opposed to something that's more passive. Like you could go to Yellowstone. I don't recommend it and just passively drive around for a couple days on the big loops that they've got there. And you would still see animals and you would still see maybe a geyser or something, but all the parks are better when they're active. But yeah, you can't just casually go through canyonlands. You definitely have to go in with a plan, I
Yeah.
think.
No, we only went to one district, just to Isle in the Sky, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like even just going to one, like you said, I didn't touch that thing. I have no idea, you know, what else there is because it was just so much.
And when we went on our, not this past road trip, but the first time I went to Moab when my kids were very small, as I mentioned before, we had a really limited amount of time. So we had a 5 month old. My son was only 5 months old at the time. So we were kind of limited with both time and what we were willing to do with him being so little. And he and I have the complexion of vampires. And we were there in late May. And we were like, oh God, we're going to burn this baby. We need to be very careful. Very little hiking on that first exposure to Moab and Arches, and didn't even bother with canyonlands because being 5 months postpartum, I barely knew what state I was in at that point, much less was able to tackle something as large, intimidating as canyonlands. So that was one of those that was at the top of my list that if I come back and I don't have a baby with me, I am going to try and get some sort of hold on this massive park. So I can't say that I've conquered it, but we at least got there and we tried to immerse ourselves in it as much as we could. But it's really pretty. It is a beautiful park and it makes you feel just
Oh,
so small in the best
oh,
way, though.
we were there was a thunder and lightning storm. So we were out walking around. We were like, oh, I don't know about this, but it made it so beautiful too, because it was dark and moody and then the rocks and oh gosh, it was just so cool.
Right.
But I was a little frightening once the lightning started. We were like, we have nowhere to go. Like, what are we supposed to do? There's no shade, there's no buildings, there's no cell, there's nothing.
Yes,
But
there's the island of the sky. I feel like you are just on the top. You are the highest point anyway.
I know, just begging
Yeah.
for it.
I don't know. Okay, lightning. You're lightning. I'm just go ahead and,
Yeah. I'm definitely ready to go back though, because I haven't been to the other three and I really need to try pie and an e-bike to
Yes.
run off the pie. So it
Yes,
sounds amazing. Do you have any national parks that are on your bucket list that like, what's your number one like park you haven't done yet, but you really want to do?
So I really want to do the Pacific Northwest part. So out there.
Yes.
We tried to do that this year, and my kids are super into dance right now. And so we're up against their recital, which is in mid-May, and then we've got dance camps and stuff that start in mid-July. And so I've got this really small window, and just getting out there with the camper was going to take me longer than I wanted to.
Yeah,
And then
we're
it
far.
wasn't to give me the flexibility to actually see all the parks that are out there, which I want to do them justice. So we looked and like, how can I do that? Can we fly out, which is so much more expensive? And of course, you'd have to rent a car, and then you're limited by the number of days you have with the car. And so I put that on the shelf. But
Yeah.
the shelf is right here. It's not going far. So that's
Yeah.
the next one. I'm hoping that
Oh.
region is the part that I hope then we explore in the U.S.
You'll have to let me know so I can do a hike with you because that would be so much
Oh,
fun.
yes.
Because those are my parks and I could, yeah, they're
Right.
my
I
babies.
need some experience.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you got it. Thank you for sharing all of that. It was so fun talking to you and so like motivating. My husband's never been to Utah or to those parks.
Oh.
And so it's always one of those things. The boys and I went with my sister, but he hasn't been. And so I'm always like, God, we got to get you out there. And so
absolutely.
listening to you, I'm like, oh yeah, when he hears this, I'm definitely gonna have to book a trip because he's like, oh, we're doing
Yes.
all of that. So
Yes.
so
They
for
are
anyone
incredible.
yeah, for anyone listening, if you guys want more information about the Utah Big Five or national parks, be sure and check out Natalie's blog because she's got all the tips and all the itinerary stuff written up there. You can reach out to her through that, and that's campingkiddos.com. And you can find her on Instagram as well. And you can follow us at Go Far Girl, and she can be hanging out in there and answer any questions that you guys have too. So it was so good talking to you and appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Ups. Thanks so much for listening to Go Far Girl. If this episode made you smile, dream a little bigger, or realize it's never too late to book the trip, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend. And hey, we've got an amazing group of women waiting for you inside our Facebook community. Just search Go Far Girl, come on in and say hi. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and never stop going far.